And let's bring up our other panelists and then get started, shall we? So, my name is Peaches Christ, if you weren't in the other room, but I think a lot of you were. And I'll be hosting this panel discussion. Let's see. Well, right here we have David Weiss, composer for the Donkey Kong video games. Most excellent. Arnie Hendricks is here. Let's see. This is Arnie over here.
Bonjour, Arnie.
I'm going to sit
Where
over
are you,
here.
Arnie? Yeah,
So
he's
Arnie's
there.
here.
Ooh,
Bio-artist, designer, and half-creator of Amsterdam's artist-grown Fatberg. Very well done, Arnie. Daniela De Paulus. Hello, Daniela.
Bonjour,
artist
Daniela.
and researcher at SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And we have Otis and Sharon Manalo, opera director. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And where's Nellie? I can hear her, but I don't see her.
I'm here, my love. I'm just there with you at all times. Always, always with you.
Oh, there she is. Fantastic. And we have Nellie, who's joining the conversation from the other side. So this topic is, or the panel is titled Exit Strategies. And the questions we're asking are, what are our modern day fears, monsters, and apocalypse? And how does the incomprehensible rise to the surface? Cultivating new life forms in other galaxies or building seastead islands to house the population of the near future? How do politicians, architects, and government officials plan for extreme conditions and emergency futures? What actions should we take to navigate emergency futures? What do we need to collectively overcome such disaster narratives and transform into a better future? So on this Thanksgiving, I can tell you that 2 years into living with Donald Trump as our fucking president, a lot of Americans are asking these questions right now. And it seems like kind of the state of the world, unfortunately, is not necessarily that far off from facing a lot of this stuff. So it might seem like a bleak conversation, but I think actually we're asking questions on, how do we survive this, really? And what does the future look like? So I guess in general, before we get specific, if any of you want to jump in, how do you approach and tackle the feeling or subject of fear in relationship to these questions in your work? If someone wants to jump in, or I can...
Fear.
I jump in as well.
yeah.
Arnie,
Go
go ahead.
No, I thought...
Bring it on,
it's
Arnie. We want to hear you. We want to hear all about you.
Fear, I think, is a very bad ingredient for being creative. And so, although this whole thing has been sort of put in the brackets of fear, we immediately have to sort of move away from it and think about possibility. I think when you're afraid, the only thing you're looking for is a solution. And looking for solutions, you are willing and ready to trample on anything in your way to get to that point, right? And that's not what we do here. We want to be creative. We want to be inventive. We want to redefine, let's say, reality. That's what we are about. Like, a lot of people are afraid and they do all kinds of crazy shit to get to the door, but not us. We're going to come up with a better solution. So this word fear immediately sort of bothered me in the whole introduction, but I'm sure that we can get around it or something in some way. So that's just what I wanted to say at first.
Can I contradict him? Just for the sake of discussion?
Bring it on. Sharon Minello actually is also a tutor of the
Please.
University of the Underground.
Because I agree with you, in theory, but at the same time, in practice, I see that fear is a huge engine for creativity, especially for people that find themselves in societies in which they are, literally threatened. So fear can also be, oil for the machine, which is called creativity.
Yeah, I agree in a lot of senses. I think, as you said, you're right in ideal, but fear for a lot of people has really been the beginning of change. Do you know what I mean? I think that fear really, it makes us realize and accept that actually this is a threat. Whatever I'm fearing right now is a real life threat, and I need to use my creativity. So I think it really pushes us to the limit as humans to find and source that creativity. Do you know what I mean? To find a solution. So I agree with you. I agree that it's all about finding the right solution, But at the same time, I think fear, in a lot of ways, is vital to that process. You know, I think if we don't fear anything, then we don't feel anything. You know.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think my work deals with fear all the time. So especially this project I'm working on, where we send brain waves into space, it's very much about pushing the boundary about what is our spirituality about, or where does yourself end and enters this bigger space, which is the universe. So it's about finding this very vulnerable space between the individual and what is universal in a way, also from a mental, spiritual perspective, if you like. But I find the topic of fear extremely inspiring, and especially the topic of death, which probably is still our biggest fear. And from the evolutionary perspective, fear is very much inbuilt in the way we function on a daily basis. And it is a constructive, a creative force which pushes us to find always solutions to deal with the environment. And so I cannot think of anything more creative than that, and death as well. So there wouldn't be any new life without death. So.
Still, just to can I just short? Of course, that is a very. I guess it's about perspectives. But what I see in the work, for instance, your work, is not so much, let's say, that fear becomes the creative force, but the embrace of life. And that's just another way of looking at things. And that's what I see in all the work of these artists, is that they move towards a different direction. And yes, of course, you can say, I mean, it's just a perspective, right? I mean, I'm happy we're having this discussion. But I see people embracing things. Like also in my work, I try to embrace what I sort of am not comfortable with. But it's the embrace of this that eventually gives me the creative energy to do what I do. Just to...
Hello. I was just going to say, without fear, you'd never actually get anything done, would you? I mean, it's that the thing where if you've got to do something where the pressure's on and the stress is on, that's when you actually do something. If you don't have fear, you can sit down and drink a pina colada on the beach and not worry about things. But when there's a fear, when there's a pressure, you actually get yourself together and do something positive about it. So I think it's a good emotion to have. Creatively, it's a good thing to carry with you.
Well, I mean, just to jump in, the next question I had, and I think we're answering it right now, is do you believe in fear as a productive source? And I guess just listening to you guys, I guess in a way, it all depends on how we, or anyone, reacts or responds to fear, right? So some people embrace fear and go stagnant. They're crippled by it. They're not productive. You know, it can be a really debilitating thing for them. It sounds like most people on this panel choose to walk through their fear and get to the other side, you know, through creating something or responding to it. So maybe that's part of it, is sort of, you know, whether or not it becomes a productive source.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that the fear is for me not a problem, but indeed how we react to fear. And I think kind of the instinctive reaction is survival, and I think kind of for me personally, the negative side of survival is when we try to kind of raise walls, protect ourselves from the danger rather than confronting the danger. And I think that is the main kind of a difference, whether you try to kind of block the danger or kind of try to confront it head on through creativity or whatever.
I think. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add that sometimes fear pushes us to act in a completely counterproductive way. So we see it also, as you said, with Donald Trump, you know, that this kind of extreme actions produce very extreme reactions that sometimes make the situation even worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's problematic to look at it on a black or white, you know, as it's so much more complex than that, and I think that's what you're touching on. I think about people in our lifetime and in other lifetimes who have been faced with social and political issues that are so real life and so much of a threat to their survival and existence as human beings. I feel that often forces us into fear and are closely associated to fear, helplessness. So let's take poverty in areas where things are looking bad and the government aren't helping and there's police brutality, for example. It may drive people indoors, but it may drive those same people who are driving who have been driven indoors to create some art that's going to allow people to unite. And when people then hear that art or see that art in manifestation, it actually gives people a collective and collaborative togetherness, empowerment, where they feel like, oh, because we're all united by this fear of something or this helplessness of this social or political issue, we can now all come together in our fear and be fearless, and we can be bold, and we can tackle this in a real life situation. So I think fear is the starting blocks for many things. I don't think it's good in and of itself as a reaction, and if you're crippled by it, but that same things are so much more oxymoronic than we see them at face value, you know? So that same crippling fear could cause you to create a masterpiece that could incite a revolution. I mean, that's idealistic, but you see the point that I'm making.
But somehow you're suggesting that to overcome fear constructively, we need some strength, intellectual strength, if you like. So it is, as humankind, we have to maybe work towards that direction. So to evolve also culturally, socially, in order to understand that those fears are something that are really bringing us down. So as education, for example, as we are here at the University of the Underground, I think is a key element to understand that fear is really, it can be a destructive feeling.
I completely agree with everything which is said. The only thing is that kind of we have, as artists, blah, blah, we have the tendency kind of to put fear is the Trump, the right wing, you know, the Putins and the Erdogans. That's fear. We are above fear. But when you look at the left, the left side of the paradigm, it's also kind of driven by fear of Trump, fear of conservatism, and yet again we find ourselves also acting by creating new walls, not willing to communicate with people that present sexist or anyway objecting ideas to our ideas. So we try to protect ourselves by creating walls between ourselves. So I just want to say that fear is not only the problem of the right, because that's often kind of the way we present it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that party politics in general has to be seen as guilty for using fear to win whatever votes that party politics is concerned with. Whether that's actually going to benefit us on a surface level or be detrimental to us on a surface level. So I think it's not important to get wrapped up in the fear that the metaphorical those people that are going to use to gain whatever vote or manipulate whatever situation they need to do. I think it's the fear within the community that is key, and I think that with the right education and the right emotional intelligence implied and the right tools to express, I think it's the fear within the community that can outsource creativity, that can then act as an outreach in a real life social and political environment, you know?
I think you said a word that I think is key here, which is manipulation. So
Sure.
if fear becomes instrumental to any kind of manipulation, whether it's right, left, center, I mean, or nowadays we are really beyond this kind of politics. But that's exactly, I think, the power of manipulation, which is the result of ignorance and weak educational system.
But if politics shows you anything, it is that politicians are extremely aware how to use, let's say, the uncreative side of fear to their goal. They come up with a story, afraid people will follow that story because they have stopped being creative. Now, what happens when people would start to redefine their own reality because they have become creative and they do not adopt any kind of story, doesn't matter, left, right, you know? What would happen if they would say, I'm going to look at things myself and I'm going to define that reality for myself? Now, this is what I'm talking about when fear itself the situation of being afraid itself does not make you creative. It is all your transformations of that fear that made you creative. Politicians are just masters of the exploitation of fear, and it's getting worse and worse and worse, and it's making me sick.
But
Well,
there is also light. I mean, there is also, sorry, not light, but, actually there is some light. There is not only politicians that use fear. I mean, there is also gamers, right? I mean, I really want to hear from David Wise. I mean, you're a wise man, right? You're a wise man, David Wise.
Well, one would like to think that at
you
my
work on
age...
Donkey Kong. I mean, this is pretty phenomenal, Donkey Kong, right? I mean,
Yeah, just moving on from that. We'll come back to that in a few minutes, but...
but tell us about Donkey Kong, because we really want to hear about Donkey Kong.
Yeah, well, we can hear about that soon. I'm just going to touch on this Trump thing and this fear thing, okay? Well, I mean, at my age, you get a lot of experience, you see a lot of life, so I'd like to say that people use fear. Donald Trump uses fear, but so does anybody who's trying to sell you something. When they're trying to sell you something, they use fear, and that's what Donald Trump's trying to do. But the positive side of that is, with any sociopathic kind of person like that, they also unite people and they bring people together collectively, because people creatively stick together and do something about him. So whilst I don't like the guy at all, I think he's probably the right person at the right time, because he will unite people to do something much better than what they've got at the moment. So I think in that way, that fear of having somebody like that will make a better change, hopefully for the whole world.
Well, there's no doubt that we've never seen in recent years the sort of mobilization or the marches, the women's march, the sort of protesting, the organizing. And I mean, I was thinking about what you were saying, Arnie, about fear, and I was thinking, it's really successful when you remove critical thinking from the conversation. And so Donald Trump, especially in American education and with entertainment and the way he's, blaming the media, it's actually really an intentional pursuit of removing critical thinking from the population, and I think it's backfiring. I actually think more people are now reading, investigating, looking for answers, talking, creating more art. The response, I think you're right in a way that in dark times, we can come out the other side as stronger people in a way.
And also, the fact that he is like he is, it's engaging, and the same in England as well, that the fact that we have the Brexit thing, it's engaging many more people in politics, and people are grouping together and doing something positive about it, rather than sitting back and letting somebody else do it. So in some way, what he's doing is very good, but it's not good in the short term.
And there's also, I think, we find ourselves in an interesting period in time in which, on the one side, the antidote to fear, of course, is courage. And I'm thinking of an interview that I read today with a very, very intelligent, with you, basically, in which you said it was about the drag queen being beaten up in Amsterdam, and then the community created this space where the drag queens can get dressed and prepare for the show, or just going clubbing near the club. And you said, no, this is the time that you just have to jump on your bike the way you look and be courageous. And I think I agree with you, that is the antidote to fear. But at the same time, we find ourselves in a time period in which courage is actually not something that we... I don't want to use the word celebrate, but it's not something. Courage seems to be kind of is related to militarization, and it's not a word that we use very lightly today. And we find ourselves in a society that is looking for safe spaces and protecting each other. So the position of the victim is in a way stronger than the hero. We don't need another hero in a way. But that puts us in a very difficult time in which we are manipulated by fear, but the antidote is also kind of out of the cultural sphere, let's say.
But do you not feel that, for example, people who are establishing these safe places or whatever are people who have taken on the courage to push for that? Because these safe spaces or these areas didn't just come about by nothing. You had people campaigning for these things. So I feel that courage is still championed. I just think that with the internet, I think the internet plays a huge part in it. We've reached a point where we can't be sold on the lie that we're not self-entitled to our human rights, So, and I think that that unity through things like the internet and through open discussions like this, people then take on the courage to go and fight for that, you know?
Okay, I'm gonna get a little more into these guys specifically now, and start to dig a little deeper about you as individuals. I myself am a horror filmmaker, and I just came off running a haunted attraction in San Francisco where for the entire month of October I scared the shit out of people who toured the San Francisco Mint building, and a lot of the journalists said, why are you obsessed with horror and darkness and this stuff? And I honestly think it's my way as a creative person of actually exercising fear in a way is through creating, like growing up, you know, as a kid being bullied and being told I was a sissy and, you know, beat up and stuff like that. I watched Freddy Krueger movies because for me, you know, watching Freddy kill people was satisfying. You know, it was a way for me to exercise, you know, a certain kind of fear, you know, through someone else's creativity. And I think there's a sort of pathology there that I know I really I know it exists for me.
Is it the case of the victim becoming the perpetrator?
Oh, I identified with Freddy, probably. You know, I probably identified with both the Scream Queen and the slasher, you know, in many ways, and could sort of, you know, Psycho with Norman Bates and things. I definitely, you know, as sick as it sounds, I more likely identified with the freak in the movie. You know, certainly Silence of the Lambs, you know, Buffalo Bill, it was sort of like, yeah, that was horrifying and dark, but I was more like Buffalo Bill than I was anyone else in the movie. You know, so I don't know that that's healthy.
It sounds
Look
like,
at me now.
It sounds like a lot to do with power, like power games maybe, or you know, like.
I think partially, and I think partly too, the act of being scared or screaming or letting off steam and release in a haunted house or at a horror movie, it does allow us to sort of exercise the sort of subconscious fears we walk around with. And like, for example, a movie like The Hurt Locker or something is actually too much for me in a way. I can't handle it. I'm too sensitive for it. But something fantastic, like A Nightmare on Elm Street, is a safe space for me to confront fear. But if it's too realistic, I actually, it's too upsetting for me. So I'm gonna ask you guys specific questions now that might seem really out there. We're gonna start with Arnie. Can you tell us about fat and how you are encouraging people to confront their fears of fat?
So just to frame this question, I guess, I'm building an island of fat here off the coast of North Amsterdam. We've been doing it for over a year. We're just accumulating fat in water, which is, it's like 4,000 kilograms right now. Actually, it's being eaten by birds, though I'm not sure the weight. We were inspired by those fatbergs, those blockages in like old sewers in London and around the world, where all of a sudden this material that we don't really want to think about too much started expressing itself, right? It was puzzling to me that this stuff wanted to be seen. It wanted to be out there. It wanted to have a voice somehow. And it, you know, and it expressed itself on our bodies, in the sewer, and we wanted to give it a kind of another expression, I guess. And we always say we're agents for the material, so sort of the fat, let's say, hired us in, and now we're just creating this island of fat, and because the material itself is so interesting to us, you know. There's never been more fat in the history of life, I think. Also, it's such an iconic material. It speaks about food. It speaks about beauty. It speaks about health. It also speaks about, you know, this sort of insane overconsumption. It speaks about throwing stuff away, and it's hidden out there. And all of a sudden, it came up, and if we felt like we needed to address it and just bring it out there, and then say, okay, so here it is. Let's learn from it. Let's listen to this material. Let's do this material research, basically, you know, if you want to frame it like that, and just be like students, and just be there, be present, and touch it and feel it. Max, can you bring me the little piece of fat, please? Just to have it present, because it's one thing talking about it, but basically this is
little piece.
It is. It is
wow.
This is just a small piece of fat that we prepared earlier. And you know, even having it on stage somehow is already satisfying to me, because, you know, it's right here. You want to touch it? No.
Can we pass it on?
Yeah, we can pass it on for sure. I mean, I'm not sure if everybody wants it.
Looks like sheer.
Go on.
So it floats.
About fear, it's interesting because in a way this Fed is a materialization of our fear, right? Or maybe of our collective guilt that we feel towards a certain way of being human on this planet. And so it seems to me that we need to get to know this material a lot better. We need to be more intimate with it, and I really appreciate that you're holding it. I'll take it off your hands. I wanted it to be a really big piece, but it didn't really turn out that way. But if you go to NDSM Wharf in the north of Amsterdam, there's a piece there floating in the water. You just have to follow the seagulls, and it's right there, and it's slowly disappearing.
I think that does. I think mostly I'm also using this as an opportunity for everyone to kind of discuss their work. And I think each of you probably I could take up an hour asking you questions about your work. So, but we'll save some time for Q&A as well. Because, I mean, you just opened Pandora's box for me. I have so many questions. But Daniela, I wanted to ask you, how is humanity's interest in space and other life forms driven by a sense of the fear and the unknown?
Yeah, I think, again, I think this is fear is a very productive force in space exploration. I'm a little bit critical about this idea of terraforming other planets as a way to escape, to have a planet B where to move. I think this is just really a big illusion that, we shouldn't be cultivating too much. But otherwise, I think more than fear, what inspires me so much about these faraway worlds is that at the end, they're very much a mirroring effect to us. So, of course, we can only imagine what already belongs to us. And so I like very much that kind of exercise of trying to look at ourselves from outside. So I don't know if the component of fear is really in it, at least from my way of looking at it.
Of course, I think of the movie Aliens, or, The Thing, or something like that, because I love science fiction.
Yes.
But I would also prefer, E.T., if it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. I think if we ever find another intelligent form, it will be very much like us, because we are only able to find what is a civilization that is using the same technology that we are using. So we are not able yet to understand the laws of physics from, a future, from a perspective that we don't have yet. So we're not going to able to find something which is too much beyond our knowledge. So I think it will be very similar to us, and maybe just as scared of us of contact.
Right.
So
that's interesting. Maybe not as exciting, but very interesting. And actually, there's a movie there, for sure.
And also, the biggest predator is a human being. So we keep pursuing this image of a creature that is extremely aggressive, but we know that we are the top of the food pyramid, and we are the most aggressive species at least on this
until
planet.
we have an Independence Day and we have aliens come and invade our planet, and then we're the bottom of the food chain then.
Right.
If we're lucky.
All right, Sharon, do you believe in monsters, and what do you believe are the modern New Age monsters of our time?
Oh, wow. Could you just ask me what I do with my daily life? Let me think. No, I mean, of course, I love monsters. In a way, I think that we
We've already covered Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, I the real monster. Trump is not a monster for me. It's nice. The real monsters for me are Mary Shelley's monsters. The creatures in between, the creatures that we cannot put in one box, which are neither male nor female, boy nor girl, you know, whatever. All of this, everything that happens in between is the monster. This is what, you know, what's Frankenstein
Sounds
is
like
about.
me.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And I don't want to quote
That's
Lady
all right.
Gaga, but, you know, lately I understood what she meant by calling her fans monsters, because it is about that. And I think that there's something also, seeing ourselves as monsters is also a liberation, because it also means that you don't need to be understood. It also means that, yeah, you know, some people understand you, the majority will not understand you, so fuck them. And I think that's kind of the empowerment of fear, especially when it comes to gender issues, that we can kind of, how do you call it, kind of, can empower us rather than try to get accepted for being yet another, you know, man, woman, trans, they, just, you know, we're all fucking monsters, deal with it.
All right, David. Now this is a very leading question. Have you prepared some examples about how you compose and engineer thrill and suspense in video games? And if you
I have
can we
prepared
hear
one
it?
David
example.
Wise, bring on the sound of Donkey Kong. We want to hear it.
Yeah, we'll hear it in a few minutes. I'm just going to explain that. I mean, we're just going to go back to Peter's here. You mentioned the Nightmare on Elm Street, didn't you? Now, years ago, 26 years ago, I did the NES version of Nightmare on Elm
Oh,
Street.
did you?
that's it.
Wow.
So we have a connection there. So do we have any composers or any musicians in the audience tonight? Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I'm just going to talk about, obviously I write music. I write music for Donkey Kong Country, many other video games. So I'm just going to discuss for a minute, how do we create fear in music or fear in video games specifically? And Max said, well, how do you do that? So I scratched my head and I thought, well, how do we do that? And the main thing is contrast. It's a bit like the food thing. Did anyone see the food thing a few minutes ago? And it's a bit like a contrast where you have your dark and your light, where you have your dull and your bright. And the way I would go about doing that is I would have two different sounds, because music works because it's moving. It kind of always goes from one to the other. And then when you morph between one to the other, you've got this movement, and that's the thing that creates the fear in. You've got as I say, you've got the dark and the light, and also surprises as well. But you also have to anticipate surprises. People need to know that they're going to be surprised, otherwise it doesn't really work. So you know when you watch a film and there's some poor helpless person wandering around and it's very dark and you know they're going to get attacked, you know that, and the music goes really quiet. And they're wandering around, and you think, any second now, and you say, poof! And of course, they're hit over the head. So we've got this audio example where I've used this spring. It's like a big spring, it's a circular spring, big tube in the middle, and you vibrate it, and it's got this great sound. And the other sound is violins. Now, when violins do that kind of very fast vibrato, it also gives you another scary sound often used in things. But when you morph between the both, you just get the best of both worlds. So can we hear that audio example now? So here's the spring. That's the spring, and the more you vibrate it, the more scary it gets. And then we have the violins. You know shit's gonna happen very soon. So now you start to morph between both of them. We hear that big spring, that low sound, and then you just have a whisper, and you know it's coming. So blending between the two, it's getting more scary. If that wasn't enough, just to double and reinforce it, you've got to have that again. The suggestion, the anticipation. It's building up to something. You know something's going to happen. Just when you think it's safe. And that's how I do it musically.
Does
Wonderful.
Depend on dissonance? Does fear depend on dissonance?
A lot of dissonance, yeah, because if it's musical, if it's pleasing to listen to, it's not that nice. I mean, you can use pleasing sounds to create fear almost, in the fact that you've got juxtaposition between two different states. But really, I think the dissonance really does help create the unease, doesn't it?
Otis,
Hey.
last but not least, how does fear inspire your words and your writing? And also, what's involved in being appointed Sheffield's first poet laureate?
Okay. I'd say fear. In a lot, I think I very much found my identity in the art form of hip hop, and I think hip hop inherently has a means to be fearless. I feel it's a place where you can be yourself and take what's making you fearful in society and put that out and try and inspire people to be fearless in the face of society. So growing up as a teenager, feeling isolated, feeling excluded, not knowing who I am, the usual teenage angst of growing up in the existential quarrel, hip-hop and this art form, this poetry, this art of rap, created a place for me to explore myself, you know? So in a lot of senses, it made me fearless, but it was fear that drove me to try and find that art form. So I think that's truly key to my growth as an artist and my finding this art in the first place. And I guess when the world feeds me fear, or I respond to things in a fearful way, I, as a means of therapy, naturally go straight to my pen. You know, I let my pen bleed, and then I feel a sort of empowerment and a sort of ease that I can now actually face what's going on in reality. So yeah, that's how fear impacts my life and my creativity. And being poet laureate of Sheffield is becoming interesting. It's for me, it's all about trying to inspire and embrace creativity as a means of empowerment and a vehicle to express. And you know, I feel in a time, especially in the UK, I don't know how it is in here, but I feel we're steering away from creativity in our education system. We're starting to say, actually, these things aren't so important, you know, and it's all about meritocracy, and it's all about how we can thrive in a capitalistic sense. Which I think is scary, and I'm not going to stand up here and say that me writing what I write or performing what I'm performing is going to make a change on a societal level, on a high structural level. So I don't believe that, but what I do believe is that when the system fails us, we need to step in as a community. And for me, that's what being poet laureate is about. It's about inspiring creativity and letting people know that there's an inner introspective power in that can unite people and then create real life change. So it's about these steps in creating change, you know?
Excellent. Well, I know that.
I'm here.
Where are you? Okay.
I'm just there.
I don't see you.
Can you see? Here.
I can't see.
Here.
Oh, there you are.
She's here.
All right, Nellie's right there in the
Yes.
center of the room. She has a microphone.
I am a microphone.
And we want to offer
A living
you guys to
microphone,
now
everyone.
participate in the conversation.
Who has
So,
a
does
question?
anyone have a question? We have a question over here. Alex?
Question, where are you? Where are you? You should make yourself known.
I'm just running the microphone.
Oh, you're
Oh,
I thought you
wow.
had a
If
question.
anybody needs the microphone, I got it.
Wow,
Oh, okay.
you have a voice.
Nelly should keep the microphone. I have a voice.
Oh, amazing.
But
Go ahead.
Anyone have a question? Raise your hand. Don't be shy.
Oh, we got a question. My man
All right.
over here.
Hey, Otis. So you're talking about like when you have fear, then you like to express it in your words and your pen.
Sure.
But don't you think it's like one thing getting it down on paper, but then like actually taking it on a like stage and like exposing it in front of everyone? That's like a whole new level of fear to overcome, right?
Yeah.
So how'd you do that?
It's definitely a new fear to overcome, but I feel that it's also a whole new empowerment. You know, so I'm not going to say it's easy to share those fears, but I think that's inner work. This is also, sorry, I left that part out. It's also what I believe about being an artist and being poet laureate for me is about. It's about challenging the things within ourselves that stop us from sharing those fears. Because the only thing that makes sharing fearful is the fact that we think it's not okay. You know, we all walk around, not all you guys, but we all on a general level walk around with the mask, with the societal mask that everything's okay. And if someone, I don't know how it is here, but on a social level, if someone appears to be emotionally hurt or emotionally upset, in the UK on a social level, I feel often you have people feeling very uncomfortable. And that uncomfortability makes people think you're being dismissive. Therefore, you think it's not okay to express that fear or that emotional hurt. But that's just that their problems. The reason we do that as people is because we've got our own problems that we're not happy to express and we're not okay with. So for me, it's about stomping on the things that stop us from sharing. Because I truly believe in this power of vulnerability. And my favorite artists, people like Atmosphere, people like Kid Cudi, Childish Gambino, who were open about their issues with race, who were open about their problems with society, their depression, their anxiety. In sharing that, in their fear that they shared and my fear that I had, I became to feel less of my fear, you know, and I started to feel united. I started to feel there was a community. And therefore, for me, it's almost the idea that, let's say you have a group of people who are suffering on a social level in reality. And then that person feels like, let's take police brutality, for example. That person feels like, how can they make a change by themselves? Like, how could they, like, police have guns, I don't have a gun. What am I going to do? Am I going to go and buy a gun? Then I'm the enemy. So let's say they go home and write a song about it. And that song manifests, they share it, they get over their fear, they decide to share it. They get over their PTSD, they decide to share it. And then you've got a stadium full of people who all collectively have this fear. And in sharing it, in getting over that fear, they can then make a change. They can then say, okay, we've got this amount of people, this group of people here that believe this and have a problem with this, and now we can create some form of change, or at least put ourselves in the right direction to create change, you know?
Can I add something? Because also, you know, your question really strikes me, because what I also feel sometimes is happening is that there are people on the podium, and then there are people that are not on the podium, and there's a power difference right there. And the people on the podium are very good at staying there, making sure that they are on the podium. And that goes for people in companies, in politics, anywhere, you know? And the thing that needs to happen is that you are invited to come on that podium and just fail, do whatever, man. I appreciate that you're going to be there.
I mean, I think that's a very fair point, Arne. Like,
it's
maybe
important
you can
to practice.
Yeah, I think you should go upstage, actually. You should go on the podium. I don't know your name, but go on the podium. That's it, voila, that's it. Okay, keep going. Okay, let's get more people up there. Like, you know, we are all scared of going upstage, but, you know, we want to hear from you.
Fear.
Okay, let's pull out. Okay, Daniela, out of here. Yes. Like, let's see, who else am I going to get up there? Like you, poor thing, like you. Like, here, I'm talking to you. Yeah, please go upstage. Yeah, I know, you didn't sign up for this. No chances, that's it, beautiful. Here we go. So we have here you go. We have new member of the podium.
We have some new members. Why don't you at least tell us your names and maybe say something about fear in relationship to the conversation.
And who the hell are you?
All right.
Who the hell are you?
Right.
Why are you?
I'm not used to being on here. My name's John, and I don't know what to say.
Bonjour,
about fear.
John. Come on, give him a bit of support, you know. I mean.
Okay, I'm just going to say, I'm just going to break in here now. Now, this is the embodiment of fear. You've just been put in a really uncomfortable situation. and I've got up over the years, and I've spoken in front of people, and the first time I got up, I was really scared. And as I've done it more and more, you get less scared. So there's two things going on here. Yes, there is the fear, but as soon as you've done it, you will feel empowered. So this is your moment.
Yeah. So I think
no pressure.
Yeah, I think we all have the fear of just fucking up, right? And being exposed and watching people, you know, see us fuck up. And like on a day-to-day basis, like in whatever, like even when you're just walking down the street, might just trip up or something. People might laugh or something. But yeah, I mean, like usually when that happens, then it's like you know, you survive, you get over it, and then it's like, whatever, like, just carry on. And I actually think it's great, you know, to like just orientate yourself towards just always moving towards your fears, you know, actually like going after them and, you know, just watching how like, oh, there's just not justified this fear. There's no need to have this fear. I mean, that's how I feel about fear.
Well, that's certainly choosing to walk through your fear, right? And I mean, you asked Otis that question about getting up on stage and you know, putting it into a performance, right? That was a whole other thing. So, I mean, kudos to you for getting up here and articulating that. Job well done.
Woo! Well,
Who the hell are you?
Hi, I'm Vulcan. And just a response to your comment that it's probably really fearful for us to be on stage. For me, it's maybe it's part of my education as a young kid that I used to dance a lot and I used to be on stage a lot. So for me, in some way, being in the projectors in front of an audience is less fearful than having a one-to-one conversation.
okay,
in a
who is
restaurant.
terrified that we get on stage then? Let's get someone
I
who's
guess I'm the
actually
wrong
terrified.
Maybe I'm the wrong person, but in some way it's really weird, this dynamic between being exposed to a stage and being less fearful of an audience of strangers than being with a friend and being afraid of being exposed by them.
Do you think that you've incorporated fear into your dance practice?
I'd just like to say as well, because if you weren't fearful, you wouldn't give it your best performance either. I think that the fear of messing up is really important to doing your very best as well.
But that's great because you can keep that fear up going because very soon you're going to be able to dance the hell out of your body in a second, actually. So yeah, keep the motion up in yourself for a second. And who is next? Where are you next? Because we have to wrap up pretty soon because actually talking about shaking the hell out of your body.
I'll be quick in that case. My name's Tom.
Hey, Tom.
Hey,
Bonjour,
everyone.
Tom.
I'm a student. I'm a student in the University of the Underground.
Bonjour,
We're
Tom.
going into our second year now. Actually, I want to say thank you to everyone who was in the panel conversation. I've performed before. Doesn't necessarily scare me to be on a stage, but to actually really say, to really honestly express yourself in the way, for example, that you did, like is scary. And a lot of I've been facing and other students on the course have been facing is exactly this thing of fear. Is it a paralyzing thing or is it a motivating thing? And I mean, perhaps none of us would have applied and be here in the first place without fear. I also found this thing really, really interesting. Can I just ask really quickly where it comes from? Like, where do you get your fat from?
Anywhere.
From anywhere. And is there a difference, like, between fat from different sources, like human fat and mouse fat? Or is it all the same?
There are many differences.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is it alive?
Well, it's organic.
Hold on, we cannot hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah, that fat you have.
So we don't discriminate against fat, so any fat is welcome. I make it a point to have as many kinds of fat as possible because it's about fat as the universal substance. And some is it very liquid when it's rendered, some is very hard. So there are many, many differences, yeah. But it all floats on water. That's one of the things that I really love about it.
Can I maybe ask, like, you two, it was a really obvious distinction between you two. You were really happy to pick it up. You're like spreading it all over your body and all over your clothes.
I'm trying to overcome my...
And you didn't want to touch it. Like, is that just hygiene or?
No, I'm going off to Brazil and I'll need these trousers for the journey. And trying to get fat out of material is really hard, you know. However many times you wash it, you need a steam iron to get it out. So just from experience, holding that...
That's an urban myth.
So, no, it's not. I know from experience.
I did say that I would happily donate some Peaches Christ fat to the project if he will set up the surgery. I'm happy to get rid of some of this. So
Thank you, Peaches.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
You can go visit me on that island. Is that it? Are we done? Oh my God, that flew by. I just want to say, you know, that I feel less afraid after our conversation, and I mean that honestly. And I want to thank all of the participants, both the scheduled panelists and also our audience panelists for a fantastic conversation. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, guys.